It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Erich Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Erich Harley. As we begin a Wednesday, Gary, what's happening?
It must be nice just to take a day off in the middle of the week.
Yeah, it's part of my new work ethic.
You know, jeez.
Yeah, work. Get a weekend off. Take a day off.
Are you gonna demand remote work now?
No. Why would I do that? Why would I work from home? That'd be stupid. If I'm going to be home. I'm just going to stay home and not work.
How you feeling?
Well, it's weird because I haven't had a persistent fever in a while. Like that is like a serious fever. 101 I've had, but 103 that keeps coming back. It's like it's one of those that, like, it reminds you of your mortality over and over again. My wife, my lovely wife, she says, "You're really quiet." This is just yesterday, Tuesday afternoon. She goes, "You're really quiet." And I looked at her and I was like, "Really?" I'm so weak. It really does. It reminds you of your own mortality. I'm doing okay. Everything's fine. I got on some antibiotics, and hopefully we'll be back to whatever normal is, my new normal, anytime soon. But yeah, crazy things going on. It's funny because we've been talking about how the U.S. and China haven't sat down, and the Trump administration has been saying, well, we're talking, and China's going, yeah, no, we're not. And not that we would believe China before we would believe President Trump, but there was no indication that any serious talks and negotiations had happened. But now it's happening in Switzerland. Apparently, that's going to happen on Thursday. They're going to start those conversations. The Trump administration is saying we're not going to be dropping tariffs in order to get, China to the table. That's not going to happen. And apparently it's not required. If everybody shows up in Switzerland, it's clear that China ultimately didn't require. In fact, I would say, does that support the theory? If China shows up without any change in the tariffs before then, does that support the theory that's been out there, the story, the rumor, whatever you want to call it, that China's in greater trouble? I've seen it. In fact, a couple of analysts say this in the most recent 2 or 3 weeks, that China's actually the one that's underwater here and in deep trouble, and that they don't have the leverage that some believe they have, and blah, blah, blah. But if China shows up without any change in the tariffs in order to talk, does that indicate anything? I don't know. I can't tell you.
Well, I think what they're looking for, again, I don't know whether those things are true or not. There's so many critics of the president and so many supporters of the president that don't really know what's going on and are just saying things. Mm-hmm. I would look at this and say they want to know what the president will actually deal with. If you look at yesterday, there were so many incredibly mixed messages that were being sent by the White House. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Again, confusing completely. I was reading the National Review article that says Trump doesn't believe what his defender says he believes about tariffs. Mm-hmm. Because yesterday when he came out, he said, tariffs are the price that people are going to have to pay to shop in the United States. Mm-hmm. We don't have to sign deals. They have to sign the deal with us. They want a piece of our market. It's going to cost them. Mm-hmm. So now the message is the United States is going to tariff everybody. And that's what every trade deal is going to be.
Right.
All right. That's not the message that they have sent out many times. There's been many different messages that they've sent out. There's a lack of seriousness, the perception of a lack of seriousness when the president keeps jumping on the 51st state thing. Mm-hmm. Stop it. It's ridiculous. It doesn't show any type of seriousness at all on the issue. Canada is not going to become the 51st state. There isn't one Republican that wants Canada to become the 51st state. So stop doing it. It's like, for me, it's almost like you telling me, I don't know, every single minute of every single day that you played with Aerosmith. Mm-hmm. At one point, Now, it doesn't bother me as much. It would probably bother Steven Tyler if you told it to him every day.
Well, first of all, he would say, Erich who?
But it's eventually, whether it's, a joke or not, whatever's in his mind, it's like, stop it, because there's a lack of seriousness when it comes to it. And he said, we don't need anything. Look at this mixed message. We don't need anything that Canada has. 3 weeks ago, he was begging them to open up the Keystone Pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
There is no consistency in the message of the president at all on this. And on so many other issues, there's absolute consistency on what he believes.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Right.
it gets, so you look at it and countries go, we have no idea. I mean, Bessent then came out and said, and I think, because when I saw that, when I saw what the president said yesterday, I went, okay, how's this going to affect the stock market? But before I looked at it, before I looked at what the stock market was doing, I saw the China thing, and then I saw what Bessent said. We don't want a total decoupling from China. They can have at mass-producing clothes and sneakers.
Yeah.
I mean, the left arm doesn't know what the right arm is doing.
Yeah,
They're
we hear all the time,
Right.
no, we want that all to come back to the U.S.
right. And so again, when we look at the trade situation overall, as we've said, China is different than Canada. And to go after Canada, remember, only the president. Think about this. President Trump is screaming about how unfair Canada is. He did the deal alone.
Mm-hmm.
The deal that we have, the trade deal we have with Canada that Trump says sucks, is horrible, that we're being ripped off, is the deal that he called, because he negotiated it alone with his trade representatives, he called the greatest trade deal in the world. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, when I look at foreign relations, I'm willing to give Trump as much room as possible because he's been consistent on that. Now, I know we talked about this yesterday when you were gone, how Marjorie Taylor Greene is just furious because it's like she's furious at the minerals deal with Ukraine because it means now we're stuck in a forever Cold War with Russia.
Right.
That this is going to be, you've just put us in harm's way, and it's ridiculous. And she disagrees with the Iran deal. Why are we supporting Israel? And this is part of the MAGA, not the entire people that call themselves MAGA, but it is a portion of the MAGA supporters that have been more critical of Ukraine than they have Russia, and they thought Trump was on their side. And we never said that. We said, no, Trump has never been an isolationist. For people to believe that, we believe he may be doing the negotiating there, but with the Houthis yesterday, for example, all the attacks we've had, and then you saw, with Israel hitting the airport in Yemen and destroying the airport in Yemen, and then, boom, but there's consistency in that. When you look at, he said he's going to the Middle East next week, and I'm thinking another type of Abraham Accords. I mean, what he did. And that's the thing with Trump. Trump does absolutely incredible, wonderful things and is, to me at least, mostly crystal clear on those things. On trade, he's all over the place.
Well,
and there's a difference between, there's a difference between holding China accountable for their cheating and going after Canada, that he alone did the deal that he said is the greatest deal ever, and now he says is the complete biggest, suckiest deal ever done. Well, there's an inconsistency because you did the deal. So I don't know what to believe on Trump when it comes to trade.
Well, I haven't even heard any outline, any plan for an outline on any kind of agreement with Canada.
Well, the other thing is, we don't need anything from Canada. 3 weeks ago, you were begging for their oil. You were begging for it. You were demanding that the company from Alberta that was doing the Keystone Pipeline get down here and get it done so we can get Canadian oil.
Right. And on the Iran thing,
like,
I don't know what to think, especially when our director of national intelligence says she has no information, no data, no evidence available to her in her new role of Iran wanting to escalate their nukes.
Yeah, but Trump clarified that on Sunday. on Meet the Press, where he said total dismantling. The only thing he'll accept is a total dismantling of the Iran nuclear.
Everything countered what she said.
Yeah.
Everything
but
countered
but
what
you make
she
a
said.
point. When Tulsi Gabbard was up there, and we're like, what is she on? And that's the thing. When you look at, for example, illegal immigration, total, complete consistency and bluntness. And it's good.
Right.
When you look at crime,
and they've handled it.
Right, and they've handled it. When you look at crime, and the other thing is when you look at the judicial system, one thing he's doing is he's going to the Supreme Court on everything because he believes he'll win the majority of it,
right,
and get his executive power. Back on Doge. Even though if Congress doesn't do anything, it will be a horrible if we have zero cuts after all the hype and hoopla of Doge. But as we've said, it took a lot of guts because there was never an upside or a win to doing Doge.
Right.
And we said this way back, when they talked about it during the campaign, we said the American public isn't screaming for cutting.
No, they're not.
Now, they may be screaming for the efficiencies that they want to bring in, modernized computers. You look at the airports now. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an announcement of the Republicans saying we need to do something because they were very critical of the infrastructure bill from the Democrats saying there's no money for airports. We can't be doing this. What in the hell? If you talk about infrastructure, airports are one of the first things that we should be looking at.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be one federal dollar going to any type of high-speed rail if we have equipment from the 80s and 90s in our airports.
Exactly.
And I don't know whether, I've seen the story of copper wires would cause, Newark to shut down. But there's so much consistency that the president has. You saw I don't know if you saw it, the CNN doing the polling on handling crime, and Biden was a -26 and Trump is a +2. So there's so many things where they're clear. But trade, I have no idea what the president wants because they've given, 5, 6, 7 explanations. And then yesterday was a very blunt no. This is not about equal trade. It's about the United States having tariffs on anything that comes into the country. You've got it. That's what he meant when he said you pay a price to do trade with the United States. And so, I saw Bessent yesterday couldn't answer the question who pays for tariffs.
Right.
He couldn't answer.
He wouldn't answer it.
He wouldn't answer the question who pays for tariffs. Well, they've already told us who pays for tariffs.
Yeah, they've already admitted there will be pain. Right. That's pain to the consumer.
Right. They've
all of those importers have to pass on those costs to the consumer. Ultimately, we pay them. We pay the tariffs if we're buying imported products. So if you're looking at it from a protectionist standpoint, then the idea is don't buy the imported products. Only buy the U.S. products. Well, that's not going to work because we don't produce everything.
And then this week again, we're going to, the message again, we're going to be able to pay, we may be able to pay all the income tax with tariffs.
Yeah.
Well, then and then you get Hollywood, where it's the complete opposite. We have a massive trade surplus. So the problem with Hollywood is a massive trade surplus.
Yeah.
With China, and when you look at it, the actual propaganda is directed towards China, and we mentioned it. We mentioned, and I saw an article in National Review mentioning the what do you call it?
The TikTok thing?
No. They mentioned TikTok. It's like, wait a minute, you're against propaganda, yet you haven't closed down TikTok,
right?
But no, the Red Dawn.
Oh yeah,
Red Dawn. How they became the North Koreans and not the China. But on Top Gun Maverick, he had a Taiwan patch on his uniform that they took off.
Yeah. Right.
In order to play in China. But that's because we have a trade surplus on it. And then I got more questions from people that are loyal Trump supporters the last 2 days saying, why does Trump want to subsidize Hollywood? The problem is bad movies.
Well, see, that's my biggest question on that whole thing. Why in the world would that be a hot button issue? If Hollywood goes away or becomes something totally different tomorrow, it's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect most people unless you work in Hollywood.
Right. And the propaganda comes from Hollywood and American companies.
If you're worried about communism being spread through messages and movies, that's from Hollywood. they're amateurs at spreading that kind of propaganda compared to what the left is doing right now. I mean, you've seen what has happened with the Discovery Group as they came in with Warner Brothers and the changing of basically the changing of the guard and shelving a lot of messaged movies, right? They did this, and they'll tell you, well, that's not necessarily the case. That's not why we shelved these movies or these projects or didn't move forward on this or that. Actually, it is. You can say it's the bottom line, but you understand how people respond and also don't respond at all to these messaged movies and series that are playing on streaming. It has changed the game because if you can't get the movie done, your message doesn't get out. And they know this. Well, some involved in Hollywood know this. But I put that on Hollywood, and I don't care. They could come or go tomorrow. It doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not something that I'm worried about. And parents, if they're looking at whatever's going to happen with, Disney or Disney Plus or that battle's already begun. Again, the greatest amount of propaganda is coming from Hollywood itself. China, you should be concerned about. But until you close down the TikTok thing and change that completely, you're not concerned.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Right now, on what the president wants, it's complete incoherence.
Yep.
I was reading National Review where they said, it goes, he really sincerely believes, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that tariffs are paid by foreigners as a kind of access charge to do business with the United States. Well, that's not true.
Right.
He doesn't believe that because he's the one that said, okay, we need to give relief to these companies. Mm-hmm. So he understands that there's pressure on the companies that they have to pass the cost on to the consumer.
Right.
So even National Review that makes a great point saying Trump doesn't believe what his defenders say he believes about tariffs. That may be accurate, but inside the article, it's not accurate because there's complete and total confusion. What does the president want?
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Logging miles during the hot summer months can put a serious strain on you and your truck's health. Did you know pollutants and allergens in the air outside can enter your cab through the HVAC system without you even cracking a window? That's why it's important to check those cabin air filters. Inhaling dirty and polluted air can cause distress if you suffer from allergies or a respiratory illness. Not to mention the distraction dirty cabin air filters can cause by blocking proper airflow to your AC system when you need it most.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Then I don't think we discussed it yet. Maybe we did the whole Dow thing, the thing that he gave the other day, which was like Bernie Sanders deodorant.
Right. Yeah.
When he said, well, right now somebody has 30 dolls to choose from. We're going to make it so they only have 2 dolls to choose from, but it will cost a little more.
Right. Yeah. We didn't get into the weeds on it. We mentioned it the other day, but it's just like what Bernie was saying.
Yeah.
You don't need that many to choose from.
And when he said, we're sold products that Americans don't need. Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Who decides that?
And you also saw that he said yesterday that basically his staff is not communicating effectively as to what he actually wants.
Right.
Well, his team is Bessent.
Right. It's Bessent's the one talking right now.
I know.
So, and he's the one leading negotiations, we're told.
And then implied he really doesn't care whether there's any deals that are done or not. We're just going to keep the tariffs on.
Right.
It's like,
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric, Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. But good stuff and good Trump yesterday was the Supreme Court saying no, you can still continue. I got mind blank here with the
Transgender ban?
no the was it the transgender ban?
The transgender ban, they can still continue with that while it works its way through the
Oh
court.
yeah, it's the transgender ban. That's okay. That's
Right.
what it was.
That was the decision. It wasn't an overall
Okay.
decision on the ban itself. It's whether or not the ban can remain in place for now.
Right. Okay.
They said it can.
I got the two confused, which by the way is good because. But the other thing, we talked a little bit about this yesterday because I've seen so much discussion saying, well, why isn't the Supreme Court involved? Why is and this didn't get a lot of news? Why isn't the Supreme Court involved in saying that the Trump administration does not have to abide by what these district judges do? We know it's wrong with the district judges, and I saw a lot of that 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went on the air yesterday, that is the oral arguments for that is next week, the 15th,
Right.
and they expect to have a decision, and the speed of this is unbelievable.
Yeah,
because
it really is.
It didn't make a lot of news, but
Right.
on the 17th of April, the Supreme Court said they'll hear oral arguments on the 15th, and a decision by the end of May is expected, or June.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing, they're going to work through this, and the analysis I've read is it shows that the Supreme Court is really serious on this and probably embarrassed by it. And it was pointed out that even Kagan said, district judges can't do this.
Right.
District judges can do things that may be their geographical area.
Yeah.
But, and we talked about this before, but district judges' main jobs is to hear federal cases.
Right. Yep.
Federal cases, federal, laws broke. A client comes in, they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they can't make things that would apply to their own geographical area, but you can't do what the district judges are doing. And so expect that to be overturned, which will be great.
Yeah.
On things like immigration. Oh, and I'll have it coming up here in a little bit. It just popped into my head. See, on MSNBC, believe it or not, on Morning Joe, had a legal analyst on that was absolutely great in explaining that, well, even the gang members, the administration can just send them. Anybody who's been here less than 2 years doesn't need any court.
Right.
You're just sent back. That's federal law. Under it, it's like some people wondering, well, why did he use the Alien Enemies Act for it when he didn't have to? Well,
Right.
I think they're trying to test everything in court.
Yeah, I really do. I think there are a lot of things that are being thrown out there in order to be effective, but also in order to get them to the highest court ultimately, and hoping that it would happen pretty quickly. And on the district court judges thing, imagine that by the end of next month at the latest, we would have a decision from the Supreme Court. That's huge.
That's huge. I mean, to get it done, remember, he's only been in since January.
Right.
To have a decision on that by June.
Right.
Will totally send the Democrats
Oh, my gosh.
into insanity.
Well, they're screaming at him now for not following the courts, and then they'll be, if that comes down and the Supreme Court says, no, the district courts can't do that, they're going to scream that the Supreme Court shouldn't exist. They'll go back to that whole thing. It's watching this whole thing play out. It's always fascinating, but it's important that these cases get to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that, and I don't know where it's going to go with the transgender ban altogether, the ultimate decision. I think the Trump administration will win it. They should win it.
Well, they'll win it simply by this. Congress didn't pass a law.
Right. And if Congress wants to change it, they can change it.
If it was to sit there and say that a president can put through an executive order, which Biden did,
Mm-hmm.
to allow transgenders in the military, and then say that the next president can't rescind it would be ridiculous.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
and I think that's why you saw
Right.
that they said this can continue until it's basically, gone through the courts.
Right.
And it's, that's the Supreme Court. You've got enough votes that understand that the military is not normal society.
Right.
You don't have the same rights in the military.
Right. Exactly. Across the board, you don't have the same rights.
Right. You don't have the same rights as a citizen.
Right.
Does in the same civil rights law does not apply.
And this is where the left has applied it incorrectly here, treating it as if the military were just like any private sector employee or employer, and that's not the case.
No.
There's no inherent right to serve.
Right. And you just can't. You don't have the freedom to just quit your job and walk away.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And so I do think that it will be. I do think it will be overturned, and I think it probably will
I
be.
think it will be too.
It'll be. I believe at least it'll be 6-3.
Could be. Yeah.
And I
think on the district court judges it could be 6-3 or even greater.
It could be 7-2.
Right.
Especially with Kagan has said in the past on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like district judges can't. Well, one of the things is, though, and I don't want to say that ego is involved in it, but I wonder at times, wait a minute, you're trying to do our job. You're trying to do what the appeals court job is. You're trying to move up from where your authority is as a judge, and encroach on higher courts. Now, they haven't encroached on the Supreme Court, but they have. I bet you the Supreme Court looks at it and says, well, but you're encroaching on what the appeals court responsibility is. This isn't yours. You don't get more power just because you want it.
Right. You don't get it.
Now, it's a complete speculation on my part. I want to make that clear, but but it also is what authority you have under the Constitution.
That's it. There is a reason for the different levels. There's a reason they have better robes than the judges and the district courts.
Robe envy.
It's robe envy. The gavels are nicer too. But there is a reason that the different levels of courts exists. And that's, I think ultimately would be it. Could there be some ego in there? Well, my question would it be necessarily ego if they're looking at it as any of the Supreme Court justices looking at it and saying, well, you guys down there.
Well, I wasn't thinking of like Thomas or Alito.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe Kagan.
That's actually where I was going.
I wasn't thinking that all the judges think that way. I think you have somebody like Thomas. It's not Constitution doesn't say you're not supposed to have that power under the Constitution.
Right.
Appeals court,
Now, Sotomayor might be a little bit torn on that one because remember she was caught on the hot mic saying, we should change things from the bench. We should basically legislate from the bench. That's our duties. That's why we're here. And then she realized she was on a hot mic. I know we're not supposed to say that out loud, but that's what we. That's why we're here.
Oh, wait a minute.
Huh?
Hold it.
What?
Did Jackson on the, even though it's not a permanent decision, did Justice Jackson abstain from voting? Did she recuse on the transgender? Did she recuse herself?
She doesn't know what a woman is.
She doesn't know what a woman is.
Right.
How can you, if you don't know what a woman is, how can you judge on that? Here it goes. Supreme Court allows Amy Howe Trump to ban transgender people from the military. I'm trying to see what the vote is on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was an unsigned order. I didn't even look at it. I said, okay. Well, I'll see if I can find it.
The court's three Democratic appointees, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, indicated that they would have denied the government's request, but they, too, did not explain their reasoning. Okay. All right. It was a brief unsigned order that was issued.
Okay, so it was unsigned order. But why did Jackson even indicate it? Why hasn't she recused herself?
She doesn't know what a woman is.
If you don't know what a woman is, how can you rule on any transgender issue?
Right.
Does any Democrat have an answer for that? Because we said this way back in her confirmation hearings that she should be viewed as unqualified, and we were angry at Republicans for just letting that slide.
Yeah.
Because she said, I don't know what a woman is. My next question would be, then how can you judge any type of civil rights law or legislation or executive order that applies to women, or how can you rule on any transgender issue where the belief is that a man can be a woman if the woman says so? If you can't define what a woman is, you are unqualified to serve as a Supreme Court judge.
Right.
We said it back then. Tell us where we're wrong in our analysis.
Right.
Never got a response from any Democrat in any way.
Nothing.
Because we're right. If you as a judge cannot observe what is self-evident and scientifically proven, you have no business being a judge.
Right. Because if you don't know what a woman is, then you don't know what women's rights are. You don't know
have no idea, right?
any of the issues that may come up with transgenders.
Yeah. Well, we said,
or
I think
Title IX, or
I think we said it last week, and when they said Title IX, they said, the article was like, Trump changes his executive order, changes Title IX. No, it didn't.
No.
Obama's order changed Title IX.
Yeah, in fact, when the joint edict between Department of Education and Department of Justice on that they sent to public schools, actually in that edict said, this is our interpretation of Title IX. What that means is we're changing Title IX.
Right. And our interpretation is biological sex.
Yeah.
Which, of course, Title IX was based on. That's fluid.
Right.
Biological sex is fluid.
Each individual.
That was the genius Obama,
right.
The smartest president ever.
Right. And as such, because at that point, under their edict, anyone could belong to any protected class by saying so, which means there are no protected classes.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Erich Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Erich Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the top of the hour, I don't know if I can even get this out of my vocal cords.
Yeah, well.
A great and correct audio cut from MSNBC and Morning Joe.
Wow.
Coming up following the top of the hour.
Wow.
No, I'm not on drugs.
Attention stations.
Attention affiliates.
I'm Ted Koppel.
But it's on illegal immigration. It was great. And by the way, conservatives picked up on it immediately, going, "What's going on with Morning Joe? This is actually right."
Yeah.
And the best editorial, I guess it's an editorial. The best piece, I found it on Breitbart. And it was just great. I'll just give you this one. Goes through. This is on Hollywood and the tariffs and everything else, and it's basically. All these several solutions are being bandied about. He goes, that's all well and good. But the films industry primary problem today is that movies suck the big one.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest problem. Again, if we're worried about propaganda from China, we've got other worries and many other greater concerns. Hollywood's doing far more communist propaganda, more extreme, off the charts, crazy propaganda than China can come up with. And as far as China getting
China can come up with propaganda, but they're not producing movies that we're watching in the United States to any great degree at all.
Well, and even if they are, do we really even care? I mean, are we getting the one with Jason Statham comes to mind? It was financed by China, and it was about a megalodon shark. It was about a giant shark. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean exactly in terms of communism or
the
any
shark
kind of,
would be Trump?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Or communism. I don't know.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Erich Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Erich Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Babylon B.
Yeah?
Trump to expand Alcatraz by putting a fence around San Francisco.
That's funny.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I just love the Babylon
Yeah,
B.
then we could do, Kurt Russell could do Escape from San Francisco,
Yeah, exactly.
the movie. Yeah.
All right, so here it is. I promised this audio cut
All right.
from MSNBC yesterday. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is reasonable. It's based on law and
What's going on
and,
here?
and truth. What is what's going on here? Here we go. Here's the discussion on illegal immigration.
Review. How is that not a violation of the Fifth Amendment, but suddenly it's a violation of the Fifth Amendment if the Trump administration does it?
Well, the short answer, back then we're talking about immigration law. The Alien Enemy Act is actually not part of immigration.
So we have three things, and as we said, excuse me for interrupting, but we have the Alien Enemy Act, which the South Texas judges said is illegal. We have what's happened in Venezuela, but then we have general deportation. That's what I'm talking about right here.
Yep. So federal law allows for even broader and speedy removal than has been used in the past. And expedited removal, as you talked about, allows for summary removal. That means no entitlement even to a hearing, possibly within 24 hours. It hasn't been used as broadly as, say, the Trump administration might want to use it, but under the statute, it is permissible to remove aliens who arrive at the border and even those who have been here for 2 years, although that 2-year provision you talked about is the lesser used in practice. But just because it isn't used very often doesn't mean it's not a part of federal law that can be used. And it will be used because it's permitted under federal law. The Congress, in its infinite wisdom, decided that aliens who arrive at the border, and they define people who arrive at the border as people who have even been here 2 years, if they have fraudulent documents, if they don't have sufficient documents, they can be removed in an expedited fashion unless they seek asylum. So you don't run into those due process concerns, at least presumably because that statute, as it exists today, is still valid. Now, that's not what's at stake with the Venezuelans and the Alien Enemies Act. But the government's argument is that, hey, court, listen, you're telling us we need to provide notice. Well, take a look at this federal law. It says that we don't even need to have a hearing. It can happen within 24 hours. So if that's good enough for people who arrive here who are aliens, it's certainly okay for people that the president has deemed to be alien enemies.
There you go, Danny Savelos, legal analyst for MSNBC.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
I just think they're using the Alien Enemies Act. I think they're just testing it to see how far they can go. I think there's so much, and we said this a long time ago. I think Trump wants to test the courts. I think one thing, it's one thing that you and I have talked about, and you've seen it over the last couple of months where Democrats will say, but they're judges, but they're judges, but they're judges, but they're judges. And because they wear the robes, we think, oh, these are the legal deities. These are the people that you'd never question at all. They always do right. Well, the public has figured out that the justice system can be corrupt and can be corrupt to the point of a banana republic. We've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen it with rogue DAs. We've seen it with rogue judges. And then you've had the example of the judge in Wisconsin and the former judge in New Mexico and what they are willing to do. They didn't give a damn about the law. And so the Democrats always trying to put judges on this higher pedestal, and good judges should be complimented and credited. And bad judges, just like good cops should be credited, bad cops should not be.
Right.
Bad cops should be gone after. Good cops should be credited and complimented for the good job that they do. We're all human beings. It's all a human endeavor, and you're going to find corruption. You're going to find immorality in any type of human endeavor. And you pointed out, but the Democrats have been trying to say, well, the judges, they can't be questioned at all. They can never. Of course the judges can be questioned. This is the whole thing. Don't criticize a judge. If you criticize a judge, well, then you're threatening them. No, you're not.
Nope.
You can criticize anybody's decision or anybody's opinion that they make. And I think Trump is extra sensitive to it because if you look at it, what politician has been a bigger victim of lawfare than Donald Trump?
Right. Yeah, it's, this is, if we're going to set the table on what's what and what the courts can do, what they can't do, what any administration can do and what they can't do, then let's do that. You're not going to get everything done, but on these major items, it's highly important they get to the high court as soon as possible. And I think that's what the administration has been doing. I don't know who. I think it's Trump's directive, but I would love to be a fly on the wall behind the scenes on how they're shaping all of this, all these actions. Again, as we believe they're trying to get these things to the Supreme Court and have the court decide on them. Because it's very fascinating, and it's been very consistent from the beginning. It was clear almost right away that they were going to push these things to the courts to have a decision on these items. And we're seeing the results, in fact, pretty fast on a number of things, too. So it's happening pretty quickly.
The only thing that's going to happen is once the Supreme Court makes the decision. I mean, you made a great point, and I think the Supreme Court will say, "Well, no, if you follow these rules and regulations here and use the proper law, no, you don't need for the vast majority of illegal immigrants, you don't need any type of due process." Congress already passed those laws.
That's the law.
As the MSNBC legal analyst said. And then, as you said, the Democrats would then start attacking the Supreme Court after they said you can't attack judges.
Right.
But that is what will make it go away. And you know that the administration every day, because of the response from Democrats, and if you saw Kristi Noem was before the House yesterday, and the Democrats are using the same old argument. You're deporting children. No, we're not.
Nope.
They went with their best. I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time.
Yeah.
It's the screaming back and forth, and it's like you're not going to win that argument.
Nope.
And they keep thinking they're somehow going to win the argument. I guess the one thing that we can say is, though, you hear nothing from Democrats about Garcia anymore.
No.
Has there been any talk?
No, I haven't seen anything.
Since this past weekend on Garcia?
I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything. And at the end of it, on the big picture, the left isn't going to win it. A big, big, big part of why he won in November is the border. And they're fixing it. And people are looking at this going, we don't see a problem. We don't see a problem at all. They had to lie about the baby being deported to make a case that would garner any attention on a real level by the American people. And then when it was discovered they were lying about it, oh, the mom chose to take the baby. The baby wasn't deported. The mom was deported. That was a concerted effort by the liberal activist media and the left to repeat that lie over and over and over again. You really had to go into the weeds to find the truth on it. That's how hell-bent they are on trying to win this. You know, at first it was this bizarre fight to get a gang member back to the states where he doesn't belong. And then they had to lie about a baby being deported because they can't win it. There is no win for them here. Ultimately, there's not a win. It's not going to happen. You see it on the border with the polls. You see everything where, you know, the president, again, is doing exactly what he promised to do. It was a huge campaign promise, the border is an issue he's owned going back to 2015, 2016 when he first ran.
Here's Secretary Noem being asked that question. I found the audio cut from Democrat Representative Escobar. Here we go. All right, here it is.
I'd like to now focus on U.S. citizens who were deported. In fact, 3 children so far, likely more children. One of those children with cancer who was deported without the medication necessary to address that child's cancer. Again, a U.S. citizen. The lawyers have said that they were not given, the family was not given an opportunity to make plans for the kids. And so they were deported, essentially, again, U.S. citizens. I have a question about the forms that ICE is supposed to utilize when engaging with parents who have children, the parents who are being deported and the U.S. citizen children. One of those forms is ICE Form 71-078, or the Caregiver Designation at Arrest form. Were any of the individuals who were deported, who had U.S. citizen children deported with them, were they given an opportunity to sign that form?
When these, the specific cases that you're referencing with these children, it was the parents' choice to take their children.
And did ICE
which it is the
follow
policy
through
of the
on the
Trump
policy?
administration to keep families together.
Ma'am, reclaiming my time. I told you at the top of this, ma'am, reclaiming my time.
How many times did she use deported? And that's absolutely false.
False.
They were not deported.
Nope. No, they were not.
And she makes it clear they weren't deported.
Right.
Man, I want my time. Give me my time. Give me my time. Give me my time. They're not going to win that argument.
No, they aren't.
They think they're going to win that argument, and they're not going to win it.
Right. And the moment the facts start to come out from Noem, shut her down, reclaim my time.
Right.
You can't, because there isn't 1 ounce of daylight in this whole thing for them to get through. They can't. There is not one way for them to leverage this for their side. The left cannot win this.
What I would have said, though, if I was Noem, I would have said, before we go any further, I'm going to answer your question, but your premise is wrong. You're not telling the truth. No children.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
I would have hit harder and go,
yeah, that's false.
I actually would have said, I said, you're lying.
That's a lie.
They weren't deported.
That's a lie.
So the premise is a lie.
Yes.
Right. You throw it right back in their face.
Yep.
Don't ever
Yeah.
be on the defensive when you don't have to be.
That was the first thing I thought when I saw it, is you start with shutting it down.
Right. Your premise is a lie.
Right.
I can't answer.
And I don't care, reclaim my time. There's the other thing, too. The one thing that we have seen time and time again by nominees and now cabinet members and others that are testifying on Capitol Hill, they've been pretty consistent in being good in their answers, with very few exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, she was fine in the answer. I just
Right.
would have said you always said you need to destroy their credibility up front when they say you've said deported. Nobody was deported.
Right.
No child was no American citizen was deported. The parent decided to do it. Please, when you're going to ask me a question, you want to reclaim your
It needs to
time.
be based on the truth.
Right. Don't lie.
Right.
Don't lie to the American public. Tell them the truth.
Right.
I'll answer your questions if the premise is the truth. If the premise is a lie, I'm not going to answer your question.
You can lie to the American people. I'm not going to do that.
Right. I mean, she was fine in doing what and this is 2020 vision,
Sure.
but I still think you need to call them out on every single lie.
Yeah.
Because you're answering a question based on a false premise, on a lie. And
Right.
Representative Escobar knows she's lying.
Yes.
And how many times did she use that word? That's the thing.
Right.
Get the word in there as many times as possible. Deported. I heard it at least 5 or 6 times in
Right.
there.
Right. It's a lie.
Right. And there's a reason she's using that word over and over again to give the American public a false reality as to what actually happened.
Right.
Because why? They know they can't win if they tell the truth.
Right.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. Costs are not the same each month. If 9,600 miles are driven one month and 10,000 miles the next, 2 different sets of costs apply for each month. For example, if your tractor payment is $1,850 per month and you drive 9,600 miles in the month, your tractor payment is costing you 19.3 cents per mile. Drive 10,000 miles, though, and that same payment will cost you 18.5 cents per mile. This is one of your major fixed costs while paying off a truck loan. The difference in this example is only a fraction of a cent, which may seem like small change, but it ultimately amounts to $960 more annually on the bottom line. Because though fixed costs do not go down over time, you can reduce your cost per mile with more paid miles. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Erich Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We're not it's, we're we.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's none of my business.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see. By the way, many of the other reports I saw on the New York Post, they said the talks with China in Geneva would happen on Thursday. The other reports are saying Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why the New York Post said Thursday, but it will be interesting to see what comes of that. The markets kind of responded to that and the pre-markets and in a positive way, but really nothing's going to until there. And if you came out of it with announcing even the framework of the deal, you could see a massive pop on the Dow, but I think they're just waiting for something again.
You can see the markets are waiting.
Yeah, no, this really has been, which is the uncertainty,
right,
basically.
But if it's good news, I think it'll skyrocket. If it's not good news, because the problem is every day that goes by. 2 weeks ago, it's like we're right on the verge of some trade deals.
Uh-huh.
And yesterday, the president said, I really don't care if we get trade deals. There's a price to pay to trade with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was going to hit the markets, but by the time I checked the markets, the announcement was that there's going to be trade talks starting with China on Saturday, and that moved the market in another direction.
Right, yeah.
But, again, it's been so, the last few days especially, pretty incoherent.
Mm.
And the Hollywood thing, and we'll have an article coming up. We want to read part of it because it's hilarious about Hollywood, because he wants to tariff Hollywood for the exact 180-degree reason that he wants tariffs on goods. Movies are considered services, but it's completely 180 degrees different. And it's like there's no preciseness in communicating with the American people on this. And it's the only thing right now where the president could succeed or fall off a cliff.
Yeah, right.
Every other issue, from what I can see, is absolutely solidly behind the president and the Republicans.
Yeah.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Man, I'm just laughing like crazy.
Yeah.
Eric, just reading part of the John Nolte column in Breitbart. Only better movies can save Hollywood, not tariffs or tax cuts. Tariffs, outsourcing, tax cuts, tax credits, China, streaming, COVID. There are all kinds of excuses for Hollywood's troubles. And now, thanks to President Trump and his Hollywood envoy, Oscar winner Jon Voight, that's Jon, several solutions are being bandied about. Well, it's all well and good, but the film industry's primary problem today is that movies suck the big one. That's all well and good, but the film industry's primary problem today is that no amount of tariffs, tax breaks, tax credits, voodoo or hoodoo can save an industry that reliably produces a product that sucks. And then there's the cost. What the hell is going on in Hollywood that Godzilla -1 can deliver fantastic and Oscar-winning special effects with a $15 million budget, but it cost $465 million to deliver a Jurassic World Dominion, which, by the way, sucked. Hollywood is also void of ideas. They have turned to $300 to $400 million carnival ride gambles that have to earn close to $1 billion with a B just to break even, and almost all those movies suck. We all know why they suck. The entertainment industry is so out of touch with the audience, with normal people, that they think we want movies to lecture us about white privilege and global warming, that we want to see open homosexuality on the big screen and transgenders portrayed as normal. Hollywood insults us, condescends us, demeans us, and this hectoring and preaching hurts the only art that matters in movies, the art of story and storytelling. Oh, and there's no sex anymore, except gay sex, which a lot of people don't want to see. I'm not talking about porn or even nudity. Whatever happened to a sexy woman looking sexy? What's wrong with the little sensual heat? Ingrid Bergman, Rita Hayworth, Barbara Stanwyck, Ginger Rogers, Veronica Lake, Lauren Bacall.
Abbott and Costello.
They all gave healthy heterosexual males a reason to live without removing anything more than their shoes and a glove.
Hollywood was built on it.
Yeah. It wasn't too long ago that we had Sharon Stone, Selma Hayek, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Halle Berry steaming up our glasses fully clothed. It's all gone now, and I miss it. How did Mad Max series go from like bombshells of Tina Turner to that weird-looking alien chick with the body of a 12-year-old boy? Men are no longer allowed to fall in love or lust at the movies, which is insane and kills the rewatch value, especially home video. Wow. Because you definitely need more movie stars who don't insult normal people, who are self-deprecating instead of obnoxiously full of themselves and who actually appreciate their good fortune and fame. Goodwill is what long careers are made of. But most of all, you need compelling stories driven by compelling characters instead of what we have now, which is the woke wrapping by way of cheap CGI, populated by actors and characters that nobody cares about. I love this. Listen to this here.
All right.
If Mr. Whipple calls customers Nazis and sells toilet paper that feels like sandpaper, no amount of tariffs or tax cuts will save Charmin. Oh, my gosh, this is funny stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. He goes, you want proof? Look at the movie Sinners. And I've never seen the movie, but
I've seen ads and articles about it. I haven't seen it.
it's not a sequel, a prequel, a video game, a remake, a board game, or a piece of IP. It's a total original starring mostly black actors, and it has captured the attention of the same movie-going public you write off as racist, simple-minded, and wanting only the familiar. How do you screw up Star Wars?
Yeah.
How do you screw up Lord of the Rings? Bottom line, movies suck. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I think about my late mom, and I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, when that's when I started really, going to, like Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And it was a big thing. Remember how you go during the week? It was a big thing to go rent a movie.
Oh, man. Friday evening, we had, in fact, right in our neighborhood, we had Blockbuster actually existed in two locations. There's an AutoZone there at the first location where it was, and now there's a dental office at the second location. But I remember, and my kids remember, my adult kids, they remember. You had to get up and go, okay, what are we going to watch tonight? Right? Because we're not going to watch anything on TV. We can afford the, whatever it was, $2.99 to go rent the movie. And then you would go through and, inevitably on a Friday, I used to own a video store. And we were a little mom and pop that ultimately, because we didn't have the leverage of Blockbuster, we didn't, in fact, even understand Blockbuster back then. But Blockbuster was really actually the studios. The movie studios set it up. Blockbuster did a rev share with those studios. That's how that worked. So they didn't have to pay for the movies. I had to pay for the movies as a store owner. So I had to get these little, a Clockwork Orange or something, I ordered 10 of those because I knew people would come in, right? Everybody would, what that experience was like for all of us for a long time was, you really wanted to get, and you were very selective about what you were going to watch. Not because, think about it today. You can scroll through Netflix and go, nah. If you went to the store and you chose a movie, you're going to watch it. Why? Because you went to the store and did it. You already did it. You're already in. You committed. You're going to sit down. So you were very selective. And, you would select what was left. It was Friday or Saturday night. You would wait for the return bin, sit at the return bin. Hey, what did he just return? What did that guy just drop off? Hey, what's in there? And you were very selective about it, but you were really looking to be entertained in a way that, I don't know if we took it for granted or back then, but you could make that case because Hollywood started then. Imagine it was like it was then. Imagine you didn't have streaming today. Remember Netflix even used to send you the DVD in the mail, as in USPS. And that was a thing. But imagine there was no streaming available today. I think Hollywood would be different. Because once they started getting these properties on streaming, right? It was like, okay, now we can start this long process of doing the messages that we want to do as a movie studio. Vince Vaughn was on Hot Ones, or They Eat the Hot Wings, a few months ago, and he was talking about it, that basically everybody has to be in line at these studios with whatever the top head of the studio is doing. You're just doing a job. You're going to greenlight it based on what you already know the studio wants to do or not do. Because the question was from Sean, the host of that show, well, why aren't there any more of these really, if you think about it, and I'll call it sophomore humor movies, college humor, if you want to call it, movies that Vince Vaughn was a part of? That's kind of how he made his name in that kind of silly, again, it's not for everybody, college boy humor kind of thing. Well, where did that go? Jamie Foxx talked about it years ago on Joe Rogan, saying, you can't be funny because all of a sudden you say a joke and then they're going to tear it apart because we're worried it's going to offend someone, or where's the message in the movie is what they'll ask you on a project. Hold on a second. Where's the message? Why should we, what's the purpose of us doing the movie? Entertain people.
Well, we know that Steve Byrne, the comedian who's, works with both Vince Vaughn and, I can't think of the Christmas Story kid. I forgot his name.
Peter Billingsley.
Peter Billingsley.
Mm-hmm.
And actually put a movie out. He talked about that to me a lot.
Yeah.
He talked to us about it a long time ago, where he just said, they don't care. It's not the story. It's like, okay, do you have is it all diverse? Is it, and Steve Byrne, by the way, is, what is he, Korean Irish, I think?
Korean Irish.
Which
was the premise for his TV show when he started coming on our show, the cast of
Sullivan
Sullivan and Son.
Yeah.
And he said his response to them was, look at the cast.
Yeah.
Roy Wood Jr. was on the show.
Right.
I mean, it couldn't be more diverse.
But I think he told me he got asked, well, where's the gay character?
Right. He
He's
said
like,
that on the air.
Yeah, because I'm dealing with what I know. Remember, Seinfeld was hit. Well, how come there's not enough diversity on Seinfeld? I mean, that got hit later on. But I remember, I wanted to make sure I finished this point, that in the late 80s, early 90s is when I really built a bond with my mother based on movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I had seen What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Right.
And with Johnny Depp, and I said, and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, my mom would enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so that really started it. That was the first one. And then I remember there were other movies like of Mice and Men with, the from the book.
Yeah. Right.
From John Steinbeck. And the original movie done, in the 50s, I think it was, or maybe early 60s.
Right, yeah.
But it was John Malkovich and Gary Sinise.
Right. The remake was.
The remake, which was great.
Yeah.
It was just a great, and my mother, loved that. And I started thinking of all the movies that we watched, A River Runs Through It, Robert Redford.
Mm-hmm.
You think about a lot of the different movies. Then you had the funny movies, City Slickers that came out that did great in the early 90s.
Right.
A League of Our Own,
right,
which is a great movie. Now, the vast majority of these movies were done by liberals, but there was really no type of, woke message that was being sent except, A League of Our Own. This is history,
right?
And it was basically about the baseball and Tom Hanks' character, of course, which was great. And you think about all of it, and I think of all those movies that were coming out that were really interesting.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump was great. I thought I was always like, okay, what message from Boys in the Hood? I thought Boys in the Hood was a great movie.
Yeah.
It was a great movie. Mm-hmm. And there were so many good. And now, as you just said, and my mother, it became a thing. What movie are you going to bring over? I'd come over to her house like every weekend, and we'd watch a movie. And it was the family bonding together for a really interesting movie. And my mother said to me, she said, I think I've really misjudged you. You're really into a lot of quality movies and art. I've never heard my mother saying that.
Right.
And somehow, in my youth, I gave you the completely wrong message about me. But it was a bonding thing. It really was great. But it was based on the great movies and the great things that were done in those movies. Great screenplays, great actors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, still today, A River Runs Through. It's one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I look at my favorite. People go, "What are your favorite movies?" I think it's going to be an action one. It's really The Way.
Right.
I love The Way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that done back in 2010, Emilio Estevez.
Right.
What a great movie. No budget, nothing. Absolutely incredible character development in that movie.
Right. Yeah.
Just a great movie.
Right.
So they're still out there, but it's not. That wasn't a major production, and that was, by the way, The Way. Spain financing, no American financing for that movie.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And
you look at Tom Cruise, what he's doing these days. Just make great popcorn movies.
No, you're right. Yeah. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Erich Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just to finish the whole thing on Hollywood and that John Nolte column saying nothing's going to save Hollywood except producing good movies that people want to see.
Right.
But you're so right. I have so many streaming services. I have access to more movies than I've ever had before. Really, for free.
Right. Yeah.
With everything that I have, because I've got Hulu because of my cell company, and I have Prime, and I've got I don't care whether there's commercials in movies because I go bathroom break, get a drink, do whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can sit there for 20 minutes and go through 500 movies and nothing hits me, and there's been no buzz that I hear on any of the movies.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way 30 years ago.
It really wasn't.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Erich Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
What are you laughing at?
Again, another Breitbart headline. Report, pro-immigration lawyers whine that Trump deportations apply to all illegals, including the Irish.
And the Dutch.
I was thinking the Dutch. I saw the Irish.
Only two kinds of people I can't stand. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures and
the Dutch.
Michael Caine, Austin Powers. And the Dutch.
It's President Donald Trump's administration is reportedly deporting illegal immigrants from Ireland. Says a lament from several immigration lawyers in the Irish Star news site. It's not just happening to Latinos. It's happening to the Irish and Italians.
And the Dutch.
And the Dutch. Every country is being treated the same. I guess the standard would be what? Legal or not legal?
Yeah, I guess.
Wow. I just burst out laughing. It goes, even the Irish. Come on, these headlines.
I love it.
Oh, my gosh. So, a little bit of concern about the technology that runs our airports, especially the debacle going on in Newark.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a fix to that. That's not something you want to skimp on, but it makes you wonder how big the problem overall is, right? I don't know, in terms of all the technology, it seems like in recent years we have seen issues that weren't fully explained.
Yeah.
That when you get into, if they're not fully explained, it always tells me then that there's a bigger problem going on that they don't want to talk about. And I don't know. I don't have any issues with, in terms of a fear of flying, but there should be a great concern about how all of that is managed and how things like this happen. And in 2025, the technology is there to sync up and secure all the systems.
Well, for gosh sakes, how many new scanners, have generation of scanners have we gone through with TSA?
Yeah.
You're talking about something that this isn't, well, some of it's rocket science. But I'm looking here, Wall Street Journal lead editorial. Chuck Schumer lands at Newark Airport belatedly. The Senate Democrat leader is outraged by the air traffic mess after opposing useful reforms for years. Lo and behold, Chuck Schumer has finally awakened to America's air traffic control problems a little bit late. After opposing reforms to the system, the New York Democrat is now demanding an investigation into the Newark Airport meltdown and the government's long-running and well-documented failures. Flight disruptions at Newark persisted on Tuesday. The primary cause is a controller shortage at the Philadelphia facility overseeing Newark, which was increased when 20% of the workers walked off the job last week. Mm-hmm. The union says equipment malfunctions, which caused them to briefly lose radar and communications with planes, caused the trauma. There is a shortage of air traffic controllers. They are relying on 1990s technology in 2025, Mr. Schumer thundered on Monday. What is the plan to replace decades-old technology, equipment, and infrastructure at our airport, he said. Perhaps he's missed the many reports over the years by the Transportation Department's Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office. Such problems are why the first Trump administration and Republicans in Congress sought to hand air traffic control to a private nonprofit, as Canada has done. This would liberate air traffic control from the annual appropriations process, which hamstrings long-term investments in technological upgrades. Yeah. A private nonprofit entity could also pay more than the government to attract and retain skilled engineers to manage the technological upgrades, a challenge that Mr. Schumer acknowledged in his remarks. Federal Aviation Administration salaries are capped at $225,000 under federal law. Big tech companies pay their junior engineers more. A nonprofit would also liberate air traffic control from the political demands by members of Congress who advocate for parochial interests that have contributed to controller shortages. We noted on Tuesday that Oklahoma representatives have opposed reforms for alternative training pathways to the FAA Academy in Oklahoma City. Mr. Schumer notably opposed the Federal Aviation Administration's plan to move controllers from Long Island to Philadelphia to oversee Newark. That move was intended in part to bring more experienced controllers to Philadelphia to train more recruits. Though the FAA first proposed this realignment in 2007, it was not executed until last summer. Had it been done earlier, there might now be more controllers to manage flight traffic at Newark instead of flying late to the scene of government-made crisis. Maybe Schumer one of these days could work to prevent one from the Wall Street Journal. This is what happens when you have a monopoly of government running things.
Yep.
They're never going to do anything as quick as a private sector or even a private sector nonprofit.
Right.
That was put into that to do that.
Right.
There's no reason. Absolutely not. The technology exists. Why isn't it being done? Government got in the way.
Yeah. How are we going through this in 2025?
Yep.
In terms of technology, why should there even be a question? How is it that a tower loses communications with a plane, and pilots can't hear the tower? This went on for...
When I heard a copper wire.
Yeah, right.
It's inexcusable.
Well,
absolutely inexcusable.
Again, how many times have we seen this in recent years where it's clear that an upgraded technology, more, investment into that, if you're going to invest into something, it has to be about the core safety items at airports. That infrastructure on transportation is vital. You can't say that can wait till later, but they've been kicking this can down the road for how long now? We've often said, because I know a lot of Border Patrol agents personally, Border Patrol agents should tell us what they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, in this section, we need more wall or more manpower, whatever it is. Air traffic control should be telling us what they need. And the technology is key here, because in an age where if there's a shortage for whatever reason, when it comes to manpower, the technology is going to have to be intuitive. It's going to have to be that much more intuitive in order to remain safe. I mean, if air traffic control can't see flights and for a minute can't communicate with pilots, holy hell. I don't know what you do with that. If you're on approach, I mean, seriously, I'd love to hear more from the pilots on this. Because that to me, that's, I mean, you're in the dark. Well, you're completely
But the only reason
lost.
the technology exists, why isn't it there?
Right.
Government gets in the way.
Why is it a question? Because because it becomes a political football.
It becomes, exactly. And what you want is not to become a political football.
Right.
Which is why, as they talked about, think about this. Canada figured it out.
Yeah.
Private nonprofit. Latest technology. You make sure it's there.
Right.
You're outside of the everyday Congress trying to do everything. You run it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because there's no reason. There is no reason except political protection of your interests.
Right.
There's no other reason not to have it.
Right. Yeah.
Like we don't have the number of air controllers. Well, they tried to move them. Shumer did everything he could to prevent air traffic controllers from coming from one area to another area.
Mm-hmm.
Why? They want to protect their own turf.
Right.
You don't run the airline industry that way.
No, it's insane.
There's no reason. There's absolutely no reason that any airport doesn't have the latest technology and doesn't have the air traffic controllers that they need and the engineers that they need to ensure that everything is done right. There's no reason. None. Zero. Except the monopoly of government gets in the way.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They say anywhere between 15 and 20 flights were being controlled by Newark Liberty approach controllers when the communications and radar went down again, pointing to this copper wiring.
You saw United canceled, was it 13 flights, something like that?
Yeah.
And they may get rid of them completely. Just say,
Right.
we're not going to fly from Newark anymore.
Right. It's not safe.
Yeah.
Can't trust it.
And if every flight runs late, nobody wants to take it.
Right.
If that's what's going to continue. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the one thing I try to do with every flight is I don't want any connections anymore because I can't, we've always had those times that, air traffic control has delayed us for an hour. You're like, okay, what's the reason now when that happens?
Right.
I was very happy when I knew that there was some weather. There's the last time I flew from Buffalo back to Dallas. And I went, oh, we're not going to take off. They go, oh, no, we're, they said, we're taking off now. They're slowing us down. They didn't go, if they were going, I don't know. If you take I think we were going against a jet stream. So you weren't going to be going fast. Your ground speed wasn't going to be faster. But it was, instead of going 475 miles an hour or 500 miles an hour, we're going to go 400. That way we get in line. So the delay is done that way.
Right.
Since there was a weather delay. There was
Right.
storms that moved through, and so they did it that way. But so far, I don't think air traffic control has been a problem here at DFW.
Not that I'm aware of.
And where I land is not that busy of an airport when I go to
Right.
Buffalo. But it's like, this makes me think, I don't want to fly anywhere into New York City. I don't want to fly into D.C. or Philly, which does connect. There are connections to Buffalo there. I want to go direct. I don't want to go through Chicago.
Right.
Take me direct. There's less of a chance. That's the odds. There's less of a chance of having a problem if you're flying direct. Once you're in the air, you got to land.
Right. Yep.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
you
insanity.
shake your head. You're just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, how in the world?
Then again, it's a government that opened the borders to allow people to come into the country.
Well, if you're not worried about the safety of Americans, why would this matter?
Yeah, doesn't matter. 866-98-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Saw this headline: Columbia University lays off around 180 staff after Trump administration revokes grants. Yesterday, I played some audio when you were gone from Bill Ackman, the billionaire investor, who has been one of the leading advocates against anti-Semitism. He's an alumnus of Harvard, and really just said, he goes, they deserve it. You can't do it. He said they've basically become a political advocacy group.
Yeah.
That's in the college. He goes, they're not a college anymore.
Right.
They're a political advocacy group. And as you and I have said before, they think about what it takes. Think about what it takes for an institution like Harvard to go from where they were. As Ackman said, they went from being a college and research institution to a political advocacy group that's advocating what? The racism of anti-Semitism and the misogyny of the radical transgender movement. Think about what it takes to go from a university and research center that was focusing on educating young people, educating people, and research to promoting the hatred of Jews and the hatred of women.
Yeah.
Think about what it takes for an institution like that, with the history that it's had, to go from what the history is to be known for the promotion and institutionalizing the hatred of Jews and the hatred of women. How the hell how do you get there? Why didn't anyone ever stand up and say, no? It's a great example for people to understand that if it can happen in Harvard, It can happen in a society. It can happen in American society. Understand, as Dad always told me, if the good people don't do something, then nobody will. If somebody doesn't stand up and do something, and that's what went on for so long at that institution. That's what I think of. It's like when you and I talk about things that are weird, and we think, well, this is bizarre, but they held a meeting on it. They were in a meeting and said, okay, should we go in this direction? Same thing with Harvard. They had to hold meetings, and nobody stood up and said, I don't think we should be promoting the hatred of Jews at Harvard.
No, they were building a culture inside of Harvard and using Harvard's what used to be a good name in order to build it. You build it under that shelter of a good name. Well, it's Harvard. It couldn't possibly be wrong. Other people show up to be a part of that administration or staff, and well, I'm being courted by Harvard. Harvard wants to hire me, so I better fit in. You find all of these, again, like-minded people, and you build it under this massive facade that it's going to remain the institution it's always been. And, of course, it's anything but.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the fight is going on.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm glad that this fight is going on because there needs to be complete exposure of what these elitist universities that have become just basically the bastions of activism in modern America.
And insane and immoral activism.
This is where radicals are made and where radicals rule. Well, that needs to change. At least the public funding for it certainly needs to change.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. Yes. Oh.
Thank you.
You got it. I got it yesterday. The update on Android.
Yeah.
Whoa. Man,
it's
did
weird.
That
It turned my phone into an iPhone. That was weird. I thought, that's a strange
That was
update.
the most intense update I've ever seen. I've never got an update on the phone that changed really the operating system on it.
Yeah, it was a major upgrade. It basically took the S23 and made it an S24.
Yeah. It changed some of my passcodes. I mean, it did.
Yeah, it wiped a few things.
It scared me for a little bit before I
Right.
figured it all out. And then I went, oh, okay, by the end of the day, it was fine. But the interesting thing is that part of it is my phone and your phone now are you T-Mobile?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Satellite phones for texting. You can be anywhere.
Yeah. That started a while back. Yeah, that started a few months ago.
Did that come with the update, though, or was that because
no, that was before. That was
okay,
pre-update.
because I was notified that it was because of the update. Is the notification that I got.
It is a new feature that they made you aware of after the update, but it actually in the system happened a few months ago, and it was happening effectively on your phone a few months ago.
No, and so if you're in line of sight of one of the satellites, now you can't call yet, though I'm sure they'll give you a charge for that one, but you can text.
Yeah.
If you have no cell signal.
Right.
Or if you're outside of a cell tower, because I guess you will have some type of cell signal, but you can't call, but you can text. And if you're somewhere like in the middle of the woods and there's no cell signal, you can dial 911 and you can text 911. You can't call, but you could text 911 and it would figure out your exact location from GPS from the satellite.
Yeah. Right. I think this is part of the new venture between T-Mobile and Starlink. And if you think about how cell phone companies, the carriers, want to compete, there's a lot that's going on right now beyond the tariff impact on the cost of the devices going forward. It's really about how do you keep customers loyal. You got to build something. Price point's always key. But beyond that, you got to build something that has to be unique in the service and how people use the phone or what they need in the service. That's always been the case with any service, but they locked people in. They really don't do contracts anymore. It's about, okay, we'll just finance your phone for 24 months, right? Well, that's locked in because the phone is locked. And so then it becomes, all right, well, if people are going beyond, if we believe they're going to be more and more going beyond that 24-month time period, we got to give them a reason not to jump, not to unlock the phone and jump somewhere else. Well, and it's all going to be about the technology and how they facilitate calls, texts, messaging, internet, and everything else.
I was with Sprint, which then became T-Mobile, and the advantage there was easy. I fly all the time, free Wi-Fi in the planes. And the last time I flew, found out that by January of this year, free Wi-Fi in American Airlines for everybody. Mm-hmm. Well, they say for members. So I think it means if you're an Advantage member. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have to be a certain level of Advantage, but they said coming in January. Now, they did say on selected flights. So I went, oh, okay, then that little bonus I get from T-Mobile is over.
Yeah.
And you're right on the thing about financing the phone, because I was ready to pay cash for it. Mm-hmm. And I forgot what the price would have eventually been, because I've been grandfathered in as a grandfather. No, I'm kidding. Mm-hmm. Since I've been grandfathered in as being the age of a grandfather.
Yeah.
There were discounts, whatever. And I said, well, okay, so if I pay, let's just say if I can just give you $900 cash. They said, yeah, but if you take it on payments, it's only $700 or $600, but you pay it over 24 months. And I said, what's the interest rate on it? They go, there is none. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, then give me that. And then I stay on for 2 years. Because,
right. And that's how they keep people locked in for 2 years, because most people would go that route and go that route. You can buy unlocked phones on Amazon. Mm-hmm. But, beyond that, and with people keeping the devices, because you ask what really builds a surge in device upgrades. Well, something in a new device that can do what others can't. And it goes beyond taking pictures or videos. That may be important to people who have to do that for a living and can incorporate it into their personal phone. All right, there's a small audience there, a small potential customer base there. Well, then for most people, where's that draw going to be? Well, it has to be in what you're going to provide in terms of service, features within that service. The airlines know this, that, look, we're all going to have free Wi-Fi on board, and that's coming.
Right.
They'll all have, every airline, every flight will have Wi-Fi, and it'll be free because we expect it. It's, I don't know.
Or built into the cost of a ticket instead of separately charged.
It'll be priced in. Right. But it's not going to be, they've got to be competitive and get people's, attention. Because if you think about, it doesn't matter if you're a business traveler or if you're a parent. You want that. If you're a parent, you bring the kid's device. It keeps them busy for the 2 or 3 hours. If you're doing business, You get to work while you're on the plane, maximize your time on the plane, or if you just want to watch a movie, whatever it is, listen to music or whatever it might be, entertainment, because they also realize integrating screens into the back of seats is antiquated.
Oh, and expensive compared to just having Wi-Fi.
If you have to buy the devices, maintain the devices, because now they're in the backs of seats for as long as that plane is in service, which means you better keep them working because it looks weird if they're not there.
Yeah.
I mean, they can replace the seats, but it gets expensive when you have to take care of all those devices, buy the devices, maintain all those devices and everything else, when you can do something very different. And that's, I think, what it gets down to is, again, because one of the safest things a crew can have is a calm, relaxed, peaceful,
sedated
flying population on that plane. Plain and simple. It really is a safety issue. It's everybody's distracted. They're in their seats where they need to be. They don't want to get up and move around. It's a key safety item for that alone. You want to make sure that their devices can run, that they can stay charged, that they can find content, and everybody can, again, maintain that distraction until the end of the flight.
And the airlines are ready. I mean, you may have to pay for the Wi-Fi, but you get free entertainment, which means you're getting partial Wi-Fi. If you've got the app and everything else, and then they say, become a member because they hope you'll stay. And it does work. I mean, the reason I've been flying with American exclusively since 97 is they went they were the ones that made it most convenient to the cities that I was traveling to. And now when I moved to Dallas in 2000, I mean, they're the only ones that have ever had a direct flight all the time. I think somebody else is supposed to do a direct flight to Buffalo, I think, but like twice a week or something. It's like, no. You need it every day.
Right.
And so that's why I fly American. They fly direct. And I've flown with them now. And then you start building points. And now I'm just below. I mean, I'll do it here in the next 6 months. I'll have permanent elite status because of the miles I've flown with it, which is another reason that you want it, because at minimum, I can pick whatever seat I want.
Right now, JetBlue offers free high-speed Wi-Fi, every seat, every plane. Delta offers free Wi-Fi to SkyMiles members on most domestic flights and is expanding it to more routes. American is launching free Wi-Fi on most flights, as we mentioned. Hawaiian Airlines offers free in-flight Wi-Fi through a partnership with Starlink. And others are, again, it's the demand by the public. That is a basic item now. Wi-Fi is a basic item, and it's expected because you have to also look at the aging population as you get more and more people that come into the workforce in the mid-20s to mid-30s. Well, in their lifetime, Wi-Fi's always been there. The Internet's always been there. They don't remember a time when they haven't had Internet. They expect it to be everywhere. They expect it to be free. And so you have to accommodate that. And that's where, again, it's about competition. It's about, and I think the service, too, with carriers, cell phone carriers, is going to be about finding unique ways and partnerships, and I think Starlink is one, where you can offer more. You can say, look, take your phone anywhere. You don't have to worry about, because you'll see it with a lot of, especially YouTubers that go out, if they go out hiking or they go out, for a camping trip or something, and they take their satellite device with them, so they can make a call or send a signal if they're in trouble. They can communicate with home in areas where they don't have service. Well, if a cell phone carrier can offer that and basically replace an entire industry. If you think about the satellite communications industry, it's actually not that small, for safety and traveling and everything else. If you can do that, then that's a big deal. And I think that's what we're looking at here.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You and I were talking about how we got updates on our phone, our Android phones, and then got into talking about the airlines and the technology on airplanes and free Wi-Fi now. And it's funny because you become accustomed to always getting improvements. And one of the things, for example, a year ago, they would say you could text, but you really couldn't. It was really unreliable trying to text on a plane. Now I text all the time on a plane. I get on the plane, I use a Wi-Fi, boom. Now they don't publicize it, but you can make phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Last time I flew, I talked to my sister for a good 45 minutes on the plane. Occasionally she'd say, there seems to be a little bit of interference. Well, you got the jet engines in the background going. Yeah. And plus you're flying in the air, so there might have been some interference. Much more reliable than before, and it's something that I expect now. I want to be, we went from being in this enclosed tube just a few years ago where you really couldn't get anything, and if you wanted something, you had to pay for it. It's like $19 from here to there. I've got to pay just to get Wi-Fi, and you went, well, okay, the return on the investment isn't there. And then remember they came up with, 20 minutes free. They got you into it, but now it's going to be free on most airlines. Come January, it's free on a lot of airlines right now. But then you want more than just the entertainment. You want the Wi-Fi. You want to text. You want to actually make phone calls. It just keeps increasing what is normal, the normal expectation of what you believe the service should be on an airplane right now.
Yeah, and it serves the all of the crew on those airplanes to have everyone distracted and doing nothing but sitting there calmly looking at their phones.
Right.
That's a key safety item.
They want phone zombies.
They want phone zombies on the plane. And the best way to do it is to make sure they have great Wi-Fi.
Which then I am suggesting free alcohol and coach also.
That's right.
Because that will totally and completely sedate the masses.
Yeah.
On the plane.
And no more of the small bottles. Large bottle.
Large bottle.
And leave the bottle at my seat.
Large.
Okay, maybe that's going too far.
And only hard liquor.
Yeah. Only hard liquor.
That's not going to cause any problems at all.
None whatsoever.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Erich Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Thank you for being here. Good morning. How is everybody?
Happy Wednesday.
All right, I've just got to play part of this here. This is hilarious. It's John Stossel doing a report here in the last day. He posted it on X.
Okay.
And it's about Education Secretary Linda McMahon coming out and saying there is no such thing as loan forgiveness. It's loan transfer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Some talk show's been saying that like for years and years and years and years and years. I don't know which talk show it is.
I don't know.
But it's funny because he talks about how he doesn't like Linda McMahon. because he did a report back, I think, in '84.
Yeah.
About how the WWE or whatever it was at that point was fake.
Ooh, yeah.
And the message, he said, got sent to one of the wrestlers who then hit him. I forgot about this completely, but it's hilarious. Let's just play it for you here because he includes that part in it. Here we go.
We will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts.
This administration's telling students, repay your loans. What a concept. If you borrow money, you have to pay it back. The previous administration said, you can let it slide.
The Biden administration is once again extending a pause on federal student loan payments.
You could miss payments and it wouldn't be reported to the credit bureaus.
Not anymore.
You must start to repay your loan.
Linda McMahon is the new education secretary. She tells students,
there isn't going to be any loan forgiveness program.
Good. College students don't deserve loan forgiveness. But I have a conflict here because I don't much like Linda McMahon. I once sued her and her sleazy husband, Vince, because of something they did to me at one of their silly pro wrestling shows. In 1984, I was doing a 2020 report on how pro wrestling is staged. And the promoters then allegedly told one of their giant employees, someone should take care of that guy.
I think this is fake.
You think it's fake? What's that? Is that fake? Huh? What the hell's wrong with you? That's open hand slap, huh? You think it's fake?
But he did it again.
So now I'm surprised to support Linda McMahon because now she says forgiving loans isn't fair.
There's no such thing as loan forgiveness. It just gets transferred to someone else.
I wanted to get to that point.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
My gosh.
He hits him twice.
I didn't know he sued them. Did he actually sue them?
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Because it's an assault.
Yeah. I thought it was a Letterman style bit.
Yeah.
Not that Nightline was 2020 was known for those.
Right. I don't like Linda McMahon. They sent somebody to hit me.
And her sleazy husband. Wow.
She might agree with that.
Could be. After the separation. Yeah.
And I forgot remember the days that if you said wrestling was fake?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Somebody would put you in a headlock.
The supporters, the fans would go crazy.
Ooh, yeah.
It was a little bit insane. Now everybody knows it's fake, admits it's fake, and love that it's fake.
Well, I was, you
staged.
Right, yeah. Scripted. Yeah. Like you, a lot of us in radio our station would promote an event, a wrestling event. And we had one, and it was not in the town. It was in a nearby town, another small town. And it was the Von Erichs and Abdullah the Butcher, I think, was the bad guy. And we go to this event, right? It happens in the little gym thing. Everybody shows up, everybody's happy. And we're leaving, and we stop to have a meal. Me and the coworker I was with. Hey, let's stop and get something to eat on the way back home. And there was it was one of the little chain steakhouses, Sizzler or something like that. We walk in, and they're all sitting at the table together, good guys and bad guys from wrestling, all sitting at the table together eating a steak. We all knew it. We all watched it, and we all loved it. I remember watching it on WTCG, which became TBS. And it's, it's the show that you're looking for, right? But I always thought the Stossel thing, in the back of my mind, that was always a staged deal for And maybe even I read the headline on the lawsuit somewhere and forgot about it, but I read it and thought, that's not a real lawsuit. That's a wrestling lawsuit. Yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
It's funny because you and I, it figures in radio, and if anything in Texas radio, you eventually dealt with the Von Erichs.
Well,
and
for
me, it was when I worked it was 80, what is it, 84, 85, 84 to 85, that I worked in Marshall, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a small auditorium, and it wasn't a whole, I think it was just maybe one or two fights, but the headliner was Kerry Von Erich taking on somebody else. So it was, and so it was just a couple of fights, whatever. And because we promoted it as a radio station, I was the morning guy, and so I became the official bell ringer.
Yeah, right.
And I did it because I had no interest in wrestling, none, absolutely none.
Right.
And I really never have. It's never been anything I've had any interest in at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I went and did it, and it was okay. And afterwards, I don't know how I ended up, not backstage or whatever it is, a locker room, the green room, whatever, with all the food and everything else. And Kerry Von Erich was there. And I can't remember how we started talking, but we probably sat and talked for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And ate the food and everything else. And my questions, just like when I meet anybody who is a celebrity, are not the typical questions.
Right. Yeah. Right.
They're more business type of questions.
Right.
And I've just always been that way. I'm not interested in your fame. I'm interested in the work and how you managed your way through all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question I asked him was, because everybody, it was insane in the town.
Mm-hmm.
It was insane. It was Kerry Von Erich. You're going to be the bell ringer for Kerry Von Erich. And I'm like, I could care less.
No, it was the deal because it was right about the time when he went from the wrestling league here, based in Texas and in the South, to the big time. He was, and he was on bigger cards and everything else. But it was so big here. It was a real culture. I loved it because of its cheesy fakeness. That's why I loved it.
And I didn't hate it. I just had no interest in it.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm the nicest guy you could possibly imagine. The first question I asked him was, "You make any money doing this?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, I'll show you the limo outside that I'm taking back, to the airport or whatever."
Right.
He goes, "In a little bit." He goes, "You can walk me out to my limo."
Yeah.
And so, but we sat and talked for a good night, just me and him, for like 90 minutes.
Yeah, we were backstage at an event that was weird because it was an auditorium and the ring was on the stage in the auditorium, which is not where you put a ring. You want to put it in the center, right?
Wow, yeah. That's weird, yeah.
And so we're standing back there, and I'm just basically going to open up. I'm just, it's just welcome, blah, 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 blah. And I'm standing back there. I go out and do my thing, and then there's the first match, whoever it was. And I go back there, and he's sitting down. And I said, all right, ready to go or something like that. And he goes, yeah, ready to go. And he stands up. He was so tall. Kerry Von Erich was a giant. And I remember thinking, this guy could crush me right now. And I just stood there. We just kind of stood off stage. We both moved over to the side of the stage watching what was going on, in this weird setup in this ring. And they had a few seats actually close to the ring on the stage. It was a bizarre setup, but we just both sat there. I didn't really have anything in common. I didn't have anything to share with him. We just both stood there going, because I'm thinking to myself, what is he thinking? Because his opponent was on the other side of the stage backstage, right? And I'm thinking to myself, what is he thinking right now? Do I remember my lines? What do I do here? What happens if this? And, that was really my experience with Von Erichs. Walked in one time to I don't know if it's a chain around anymore, Long John Silver's, the fish place.
I don't even know.
Here in North Texas, and saw Kevin Von Erich with his two of his sons sitting there eating.
He lives in Hawaii now, I think.
He lives in Hawaii now, yeah.
Well, to finish the story about Kerry Von Erich, we talked for an hour and a half. I walked him out to his limo. We shook hands. I went back to my 1980 Pontiac Sunbird.
Yeah.
And went back home and went, that was really, really cool. What a really, really nice guy. What a fascinating business he's in, because that's what really got to me. It's like, you make money doing this? He goes, yeah, I make a ton of money doing it. And it was but it wasn't like in an egotistical way. It was just in a business way. He saw that I had a natural curiosity about what he was doing. And so then, I moved on in my career, and I ended up in Niagara Falls, where I ended up doing talk radio. And Niagara Falls is where, his father is from.
Mm-hmm. French.
And, and so everybody would talk about it there. So it was always on my mind. I hadn't left Buffalo yet in 93. I was just a month from going to Rockford, Illinois, to our great affiliate, WROK in Rockford, where we're on, and got the news that he committed suicide.
Yeah.
I was devastated. I'm still devastated today. And it's funny that somebody who you meet for an hour and a half, who you just have this great conversation with, and they commit suicide, and you're like, oh, man. And
well, in Texas, it was such a big deal. I mean, it just became a major tragedy.
Yeah.
Because of the culture here in Texas surrounding basically their rise to fame for the whole family.
Then the Iron Claw came out, and the Iron Claw, when they got to that scene, it was heartbreaking for me.
Yeah,
it still is for any human being that, had that kind of potential. And then and doing what they did. And I know he was in the motorcycle accident and got his leg amputated, and then he was, having marital problems. And I guess Bret Hart in his book said that he had said he wanted to rejoin his brothers. It was a thought. And I'm just like, it just tore me up inside, because he seemed such like a nice guy, and I can't imagine being tortured and thinking about committing suicide over a significant period of time when you've had incredible success, in your life doing something, which shows success itself in business isn't what makes you happy.
Right.
And
well, especially given that they were or seemed to be, for all of us that were watching, seemed to be such a close-knit family. But clearly some major issues going on there.
Yeah, but that's just how hilarious for John Stossel to be talking about.
Yeah,
Linda McMahon,
I remember
the education secretary, and saying, I agree with her, but I don't like her because she had me beat up.
Well,
by another wrestler.
Well, there's the thing. I remember the slap, and I remember thinking, staged, part of it. Again, I didn't really key in on Stossel. He was just a guy who was just, back then he was just a reporter. For us, that anybody that was following along, it was just, he slapped a reporter. Okay, part of the deal, right? Part of the show. And I never really, I didn't know the lawsuit was for real.
But when I watched the Iron Claw,
yeah,
part of me felt like I missed something that I would have liked to seen, and that was be living in Texas when the Von Erichs were moving up, and then the auditorium that they played in.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they did it. They had the auditorium, and I'm like, well, which is now gone.
Right.
But it was the modern Dallas skyline in the background. So I went, but I wish I would have been here. Part of me said, I wish I would have been there, from somebody who always on wrestling went, I don't care.
Yeah,
I just don't care.
It was cool. They were real rock stars.
Yeah,
they were real rock stars. I mean, it was pretty. And you felt like they were locals that were, getting famous, world famous, and that feels unique as well. Yeah.
866-98 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Erich Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Erich Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, so Eric, after the whole John Stossel thing and just the funny stuff about wrestling and how he doesn't like Linda McMahon, but agrees with her on the whole thing of loans, he goes further into saying this is normal. You know, paying loans is normal.
Yeah,
but there's a couple of things. There's maybe more than a couple of things, but 2 things that we'll focus on here that we look at when it comes to where we're going as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
One is paying back your loans. Something that is so ingrained in the culture that I grew up with and you grew up with. You pay your debt.
Yeah.
There are no excuses.
Right.
You pay your debt.
Yeah.
There is no excuse. Well, I'd have to work 2 jobs to do it. Then you work 2 jobs to do it.
Yep. It was a very serious matter to borrow in the first place.
Yeah, and so when we talk about you should pay your loan, we're not putting on you a responsibility that we ever rejected. In fact, we embraced it to the point where there was never a question. And if we didn't pay our loans, or if we had to get and I never did, but if we had to get an extension on our loans, and I know this just from when I was a bill collector, that when I was a bill collector and people said, I need help, when I said, well, you can pay the interest for 1 month, they were embarrassed to not be fulfilling the contract that they signed. We'll get more to that because another one we want to add to it, which is just these things were normal for us. There is no expectation that we're asking the younger generation to do that we didn't embrace.
Right.
We embraced all of what we're talking about. More coming up.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Erich Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here. You know, somebody should do a focus group of just young people and continue to do a focus group just to find out how young people think today. And I don't mean just young people. I don't mean when I say young people like 15 to 21. I mean from 20 to 50. And the reason is we were talking about the John Stossel report, and we had to play it because it was quite funny, where he was talking about he agrees with Linda McMahon, the education secretary, that you should pay back your loans.
Yeah.
That this is not controversial at all. You pay back your college loans. You don't get a special dispensation on it. You pay it. You took it out. You pay it. And he said, and this comes from somebody who doesn't like Linda McMahon, because back in 1984, he actually sued her because he believes that they were responsible, her and her. Is he officially an ex yet, Vince?
They are separated.
Okay.
I guess you could call him an ex.
He believes sent a wrestler when he questioned him back in '84. And he said, "What you're doing is fake," and the guy slapped him. I mean, just knocked him to the ground. It just wasn't it was as hard as any punch you could take.
Yeah.
He just whoa, and he's on, and then he hit him a second time because you think that's fake. You think that's fake, but he was saying basically the point was. But I agree with Linda McMahon because it just so much sense. And so I look at a couple of things. One is that. The other one is having to go to work. Things for us that are not controversial at all. In fact, you can't sit there, well, you guys don't know. No, when COVID started, our company, when COVID started, I remember waking up and, yeah, I think you're the one that I got the text message from. Check your email. They're telling us we have to do the show from home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at that time, we had no capabilities of doing the shows at home.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like, and whatever you need to set it up. And it's 10 o'clock. I'm waking up at 10 o'clock. I live, almost 30 miles from here.
Right.
I'm like, well, what the hell are they talking about? And I just wrote you back, I'll see you in there. And we came in, the engineer was here, and we said, well, number one, we're not set up. Number two, we're not going to do it.
Right.
We're not going to do our show from home. We want to be in the studio together. And I think both of us being, having engineering knowledge and being in radio management, the first thing you look at is, okay, what kind of disaster will this cause? And we knew that when it comes to sound quality would hurt.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing it from home, you can never guarantee the sound quality that you get from doing it inside of a studio.
Right.
And also, the fact is you can't get the same type of chemistry. The chemistry you and I have would suffer if we couldn't see each other, even if we had computer monitors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same. It's not the same as being around everybody here. It's much more like a team at work. It's a group effort. It's a team effort is what you do. It's not two individuals talking. Plus, for me, I know it was in part the entire behavior of me waking up, taking a shower, putting on the clothes, grabbing everything, driving, thinking about what I'm going to be doing on the way in. I wanted to keep the routine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very important to us. We never thought, ever did we think, oh, I never have to get out on my boxer shorts.
Yeah.
I can just walk in. I don't have to shower. I can just walk in and do the show.
Yeah.
And we never thought of that because all we cared about was the quality of the show. That's the only thing that mattered to us, nothing. And we told management, no, we're not going to do it. We won't do it. Whatever we have to do, we'll take it. We'll be proactive. We've never, by the way, our management is great. And there was no real pushback on it.
No.
They agreed very readily.
No, the first question for us was, and you guys are...
Yes, exactly. You guys are who? And I believe we were the only show in all of our company that did that, that actually did it from the studio every day.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we're the only ones. And then what happened was, a year after COVID was over, they demanded everybody come back. Demanded.
Right.
And there was like no choice. No, because I think they saw afterwards, and they saw afterwards the fact of no, you need to do a radio show. And if you're going to do especially team radio shows, you need people in the same studio. It just isn't the same chemistry.
Right.
It just isn't.
Right.
And so that is our mindset. So working remote, never even ever contemplated anything like that.
No.
And not paying back our loans. Never even contemplated that there was ever any other option. And for you or I or anybody in our generation, you guys are old school. Old school means you take care of your own responsibility. Old school means you don't expect somebody else to pay for what you want. But there was a shame if I thought I couldn't pay a bill.
Yeah. Right.
And the last thing I would ever think of is ask somebody else, to take care of my debt.
Right.
I mean, that's the immorality of that is so incredibly great. Now, it also comes if you say people go, well, it's not political. Well, part of it could be a little bit political. The country was built on property rights. You and I know that. Property rights are extremely important to us. And we've always said when it comes to property rights, I want you to respect my property. I've got to respect yours. And when you loan me money, you're loaning me your property. I don't care whether you're a person, a bank, doesn't matter. It's not mine. You've lent it to me, and the payment is the interest.
And the moment we let
profit.
that, moment we let that fail, it's all over because that's the beginning of the end of property rights. It really is when you talk about that, and we saw that, with the meltdown in 2008 and 2009, and subprime loans and everything else, and this mindset that, well, I don't own any of this because people weren't required to put anything down on homes. The thought process was, well, I don't have any teeth in the game.
I can bail.
I can walk away and go rent something.
Right.
Now, it became problematic for those individuals if you have a foreclosure on your credit report. That's going to haunt you for a long time, if not forever, on your credit report, even with trying to rent someplace. But this mindset built by the government, big government supporters, the left, who always sell it as something noble.
Yeah.
Well, the word forgive, loan forgiveness, forgive. Well, the whole housing crisis and meltdown was built on this noble idea of putting people in houses, the American dream.
That they couldn't afford.
They couldn't afford those houses. They had unbelievable products out there that were being sold, in fact, peddled by banks because banks were told by the government, you don't worry about it. Fannie and Freddie will take that off your books. You initiate, we'll take it from there. And they were taking up so much of that bad paper, including NINA loans. NINA, an acronym for no income, no assets. So basically, just prove that you're breathing, that you exist, and you're good to go. You know, David Faber at CNBC did a special on it called House of Cards, but didn't go back far enough, in our opinion. In fact, didn't tell the entire math story, just like the movie The Big Short. Didn't tell the entire story. The Big Short talked about how Wall Street responded to it, but take Fannie and Freddie out of the equation, and you would have had a more organic situation, like what our parents went through, and what they went through leading up to that, and that was you've got to prove your worth, and you got to have teeth in the game. It's a very organic borrowing and lending scenario where the lender says, well, you got to prove to us you're worthy, and you need teeth in the game before we're going to put teeth in the game.
And that's why my parents lived in a house under 1,000 square feet with 7 people.
We talked about that during the crisis. That it's okay for if you want to buy a house.
They had a home.
Yep.
But it wasn't 2,400 square feet.
Right.
It wasn't 2,000.
Right.
People lived in smaller homes.
Right.
You can go through those subdivisions today and look at the houses built in the 50s and the 60s.
Yep.
And you say, oh, they're a lot smaller than the houses being built today.
Right.
Now, there is that thought process of people. I mean, tiny homes are a part of it, even though it's not a major part of the market.
Yeah.
But smaller homes are coming back in vogue again.
And we talked about, too, the builders that were coming in with new models after the housing crisis had passed a few years. They came in and said, okay, we're going to build some houses around, 1,500 square feet. Perfectly okay. My parents, the first house my parents bought, because we lived on bases. After my dad came back from the Vietnam conflict, San Antonio, 1,000 square feet. It was a new home. And it was the first house they ever bought. 16 grand. And for those listening in San Antonio, Adams Hill Drive. And loved that house. Was it cramped? Maybe. I never thought of it as a kid. 5 kids. 7 people in 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I loved the house. Huge backyard.
Same with us. Huge backyard. We can,
and again, we create this because it's this thought pattern that the government needs to come in and control things. Well, when they do that, they often break things, including housing. If not for Fannie and Freddie, then you wouldn't have had the meltdown you had, because you wouldn't have convinced the lenders to do what they did. And then from that, investors to do what they did. That's how all that went. It went exactly as it was always going to go when big government comes in and says, don't worry. In September 2003, then Treasury Secretary Snow, testifying on Capitol Hill, tells the House committee, Fannie and Freddie can't sustain this. Barney Frank, leader, the head of that committee, the chair at that time, said, no, what we need to do is more of this. And they did. They ramped it up to the nth degree. And they said, basically, what we need is more of these types of loans, and then more good paper will outweigh the bad paper.
It's insane.
That's like saying your tire is fine except for a small hole. Aside from the small hole, you're good to go. Most of your tire is in great shape. And we saw where it led. And Barney Frank tried to get away with, remember the day he said on CNBC, well, I never promoted that people buy houses. I wanted them to move into apartments or do what they could afford. And the phones literally shut down at CNBC. So many people were calling in.
Shut up.
Yeah. Screaming at the top of their lungs. But, this idea is the same when it comes to college loans. Let's forgive these loans. Forgive. Well, the American taxpayer is the bank.
Yeah. Nothing's being forgiven. Nothing's being written off.
Right.
It's all being paid for by other people. You're simply transferring the debt.
Yep.
866-98 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Erich Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Erich Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Hey, our show ends in an hour, and after the show ends, we record. During the show, we record the whole thing. As soon as the show is over, it becomes our podcast. So our podcast is our show, and our show is our podcast. So if you don't catch all 5 hours, and you want to catch more of it after the show's over, you can do that on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you can't listen to one of our great radio stations while we're on the air live for some reason, you can listen on an app because we stream all 5 hours.
And thank you.
Of course. We mean it.
To all of our podcasters who are listening in the future,
good afternoon.
Tell us what it's like. Share your thoughts.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.